Hey guys, I'm here with John King, a fellow INFJ. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey folks, it's me. Yeah, well, I'm a 46-year-old male, brought up in New Zealand. Not a problem there. Everything okay? uh, I'd say I was relatively thin, not exactly an introvert until I hit puberty. Whoa! Then I grew out, then up. Yeah. Any questions you got for me? Go right ahead.
Yes. I mean, kind of going into that, I mean, you know this question by now probably, but can you describe kind of how you were as a child and then into adulthood, kind of going through the stages and phases?
Well, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, so all I remember is being brought up by a single mother. That's how life was. I had no knowledge of my father at all. It wasn't until I was 16 when I was able to meet him. Biggest mistake of my life. But grew up in a fairly haphazardous household. Apart from that, everyone in my family was big, except for my adopted sister. As for their types, I have no idea.
Really?
Yeah. I have no idea about their types.
As far as your father goes, meeting your father, why was that the worst decision?
It was the worst decision, but it was also the best decision. As crazy it may sound, it was because of meeting him that I decided to stay honest and truthful in my life. Having him allow me and my brother into his house while I was down there, that was okay. Having his promises broken numerous times, then to suddenly find out that after I left, because there was another promise that was broken. He was supposed to pay for me to travel back home. After I left, he kicked my brother out. He was a right wild.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm certainly an INFJ.
How did you discover that you were an INFJ?
Oh, I know that there are no such things as coincidences. And to suddenly have 17 reasons why you're 17 reasons why you're the rarest personality type just suddenly came up on my YouTube channel and my YouTube page. I didn't have a channel then. And I thought, yeah, I'll go through it. I went through everything except for one. It just resonated with me. That one was having an ego. Hell no. I'm as humble as can be. And since then, I had a look at some other MBTI channels about the INFJ. Okay, then I thought I'd do the test. What do you know? INFJ.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like, whoa. Okay, but every channel that I've been to, they talk about the statistical side, the technical side, not about the side which other INFJs are trapped with. How do they protect themselves with the energy? I found a couple which sort of give tips on how, but no, nothing about how to guide people. And it wasn't until one time on Boom Shaka's channel, there was in the comment section, one person and myself were talking about the true dark side of the INFJ. We had both experienced it. Me only standing on the edge, him actually crossing over but being able to come back. And there was nothing to indicate what we had found. So with that, I decided to do a video after a month's contemplating, humming and hawing, and being shit scared, because I am definitely camera shy. I decided to do the video, my very first one. Poor quality, of course, but that was an old phone. And then it just grew slightly. I think I've covered everything that I actually wanted to.
So where do you go now with that, if you have covered everything that you want to talk about?
Well, I guess it's stagnant. The whole thing is stagnant. I've given advice on how to protect and build an energy barrier. Some slight tips on how to use your empathy abilities. And the reason behind what turned my life around when I was contemplating suicide, or as I call it, stupicide. Just suddenly having a vision of me helping a lot of people that I'd never met just threw me for a loop.
Would you kind of like to talk about your experience with that? I watched that video, but for those who haven't watched that video and aren't familiar with your story, would you like to kind of go into your experience and how you got out of it?
Okay, well, it has quite a backstory to it. Part of it is I hadn't even had a girlfriend at the time. This was when I was 23. Yeah, quite a long time. Everything was just piling on top of me. People were just giving me the cold shoulder or whatnot. Things were just getting worse and worse. It wasn't my first time. My first time where I stupidly used blunt knives. And this time I decided to head out with a razor blade in hand and go under a bridge so I wouldn't be found. I had just made contact with the razor blade and my skin, about to go up my arm. I just asked the one question: if I do this, who will I affect? I closed my eyes. I saw my family go past, then my friends, then a whole bunch of people's faces that I hadn't even seen before. Just a whole lot of people. That was weird. And it made me realize that there's more to this world than just me. More to my life than just me. I can help other people do things, even though I may just get the word thanks. That's enough. Even if I do some work nowadays, I'm like, I don't need to be paid. Just thanks is enough.
So for those of you that are watching this, obviously this is very heavy stuff.
With a good ending.
Yeah, with a good ending. And I don't know, you know, for those of you that are watching, we don't know, you know, necessarily what you're going through. You know, either myself or John, we obviously don't, you know everything. But if you're going through some type of situation where you feel like ending your life, I think, you know, John's story is a very inspirational story in that respect, because you really don't know what other people are going through, and you also don't know, like, when you're in that state, because I know that I've been in that state too, you know, it was different, but yeah. I thought about my family and my friends and the people that would miss me. And when you do that, and I'm not saying that it's a selfish act necessarily, you know, there's different schools of thought on suicide, but it definitely, it's hard to realize sometimes, for certain people to realize, you know, how many people they're going to affect by committing that act. And it's just always good to get back to who you're going to, who's going to miss you, because in the end, it's going to affect them emotionally so heavily that, I mean, it's devastating. I can't even imagine. Luckily, I've never had someone in my, you know, immediate family or friends that has done that, but I really feel for the people that have. And, you know, sometimes it gets too hard, but I hope anybody that's watching this, you know, if you ever do get to that point, I hope you're able to realize that your life does matter. So.
Yeah, every life does matter. No matter who you are, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling out of sorts, find someone that can help you out. There is people out there that will help. Even some strangers may help. Some may just try to push you over the edge, but stuff them. Push them out of the way.
Yeah. Wow. I guess kind of steering the direction into maybe a kind of a happier subject, even though I think it's still great to go into these subjects. What would you say is the best part about being an INFJ?
Well, since finally seeing that very first video, it made everything come together. Everything about my whole life. It made absolute perfect sense of why I am. Brought everything together. That was, to me, was it. That's all I had needed to know. It also helped to make sure that my abilities, even though I keep them quiet, I prefer myself to be known as a sensitive instead of empathic. It's just pathetic. Yeah. Being sensitive does help a lot. You can put yourself in other people's shoes. You can see things through other people's eyes. You can freak people out, and I mean freak people out, over the email. Work that enough. Just by email, you'll be able to see what's in the other person's life. Not only physically either. Because there's one person who's living now in Los Angeles. I doubt that she'll be watching, but I freaked her out. I told her about her spiritual guardians.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm here in New Zealand. Hey, don't believe me? Fine. Having the ability that we have is not only worthwhile, towards people. There's the animals around us. If you find that your energy is strong enough when you're walking along, there'll be probably dogs that you can't even see. They can't even see you. And they're just barking in your direction. They can sense that stronger energy. And it's the energy that we can use to help others. As long as we've got that barrier around us to stop us from being overwhelmed, we're fine.
That's interesting that you bring up animals. I don't know if you relate to this, but I've always found for myself that animals are particularly drawn to me, and I've had situations where people will be like, oh yeah, my dog doesn't really like people, my dog doesn't really like most people, or like my cat's kind of, you know, whatever. And then when I meet that dog or cat or whatever the animal is, I have some type of presence with them. I don't know what it is, where, you know, I've had numerous people tell me I've never seen my dog or cat or whatever, fill in the blank animal, react like that before.
Yeah, they're drawn towards the energy. They can tell the stronger energy from anyone around them. And us INFJs, well, basically all intuitives, we have that energy. We have that strength.
That's interesting. I don't know if it is only, you know, just intuitives, but that is very interesting, that concept. Going into kind of spiritual guardians, I don't know too much about spiritual guardians, I would have to say, but would you care to explain kind of what the premise is and kind of walk that concept through with us?
Okay. Spiritual guardians, some can be known as totems, according to the American Indian, or Native Americans, I should say. There are others which are protectors. Some are called familiars. Some would have the cat or the dog as their familiar, but they would also have something else latched to them, something which would give them their strength. If you may recall, Emily, the first time I mentioned a spiritual guardian for you was a parakeet.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. The one thing I didn't want to type up was the parakeet saying, "Bite my bum." I don't know why, but your parakeet did. It's one of your cheeky sides. When you get the chance.
Would you like to, I mean, kind of describe maybe what yours is and what the parakeet means?
The parakeet, they're normally loyal, but they can be flighty. They can flap their wings around as if trying to cool down, trying to act big, trying to act strong, but they can also be cheeky, very cheeky. I've been told with mine, I actually have two. One is a little wee field mouse. He's a cheeky little rascal. He's going from one shoulder to another. Strange as amazing. I also have a black jaguar. It was initially thought of as a black panther, but there are two types of black panthers: black leopard or black jaguar. Mine's the black jaguar, and they are solitary, but they are protectors. The black leopard, however, they can fit into groups and they will hunt. The black jaguar will go about casually, then to catch the food. catch them by surprise.
That's interesting. Kind of going into friendships, how would you describe your friendships growing up, and how would you describe now how you viewed friendships?
Well, my friendships when growing up, ooh, crikey. I'd say friendships of necessity. Sure, we'd get into trouble now and then, create yard fire, cause a bit of trouble, but that's okay. We're just kids being energetic. Lately, I've been more specific. Most of my friends have gravitated away. There's one friend of mine I haven't seen for months, but he's still on my social media, so that's fine. It's perfectly fine there. The occasional friends which I do have now, some I don't even know their name, yet I see them at the gym. So some are just friends of convenience, friends of necessity.
What is a moment where you felt like you were maybe different, or kind of, I don't know if you have really felt like this, but I would assume you have felt outcasted in some way, and how did you deal with that?
Okay, well, this story would start what you would call middle school. We call intermediate. When my puberty started, that's when I started growing outwards. Sure, I was the head singer. Yes, I was into singing. Shoved out in front of the whole class, in front of the whole school.
Wow.
The class was behind me. I was standing at the front, in front of the whole school at assembly, singing away, not a problem. Then when I went into high school, aka boarding school, very private, it was the toughest school in New Zealand. I got a nickname the very first day as I was walking up the driveway.
Wow.
And it was the name of a previous deputy principal. It was the nickname of the previous deputy principal. That was my worst school ever, because almost, and I mean almost every day, I was bullied.
Wow.
The only times when I wasn't bullied was either when I was on holiday or when the others were on holiday and I had to stay there. Apart from that, didn't matter who they were, bullied me. I stayed there for 2 years. Had to, before the finances got a bit too much, then I had to go to public school. Even then I was still bullied. But thanks to my experiences at boarding school, I was able to stand up for myself easily without stepping down.
How did you stand up for yourself?
Just by not backing off, not cowering, not running away, whimpering, just knowing that I can handle a punch. Plus, that boarding school, even though it was the hardest, I have great respect for it. Have you ever heard of the haka?
I don't know if I have.
It's a Māori tribal dance. It can be done in various forms. And with us then, for our practices, we had to do it shirtless, of course. And we also had to draw blood.
Wow.
Yeah. We had to draw blood. And that was just for practice. When it came to the real thing, we still had to draw blood. But you grew strength while you were there. Strength that you can handle anything and anyone. Times when you can't, but times when you can. Zen moods, so do I.
What was that?
Zen moods loves watching the haka.
Who would you say is your biggest inspiration?
Oh, crikey. I would say my oldest brother. My oldest brother. He would be my biggest inspiration. For me, growing up, I had thought he was my dad till I left primary school. But he was my oldest brother. He went to the Navy when he was 16. And after he left the Navy, he turned his life around, went into nursing. He's now head nurse in the hospital he works at. He's also a doctor in sports physiology. Yeah, he's in New Zealand doing the research with concussion, especially for the sports teams, and he's now working with the women's rugby.
Wow. That's awesome.
So, yeah, it is awesome.
How do you think he has inspired you?
Just by being tenacious, going for what he dreams of. He had dreamed of dealing with rugby, especially while he was in the Navy. He knew some top sports personalities then. He's been on TV a couple of times. He's been quoted, in fact. He's also been all over the world. He's been invited to England. He tried to get the rugby union to look at his notes. They turned him down. That movie Concussion comes out. And all of a sudden, they start rethinking everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you were to return back to any time in your life, when would you return and why?
Oh, crikey. I think the time I would turn back to would be, I'd say, 2002. Was it 2002? Yeah, the last part of 2002, when I was outside the hostel and I had a voice just suddenly into my head saying, "It's time." That's when I knew that I was listed for something bigger. What I would like to do to change the difference there is put on another piece of paper what I had written down first off. I can't find the damn thing. I would love to just write it up, type it up, and just plaster it somewhere. It was something beautiful. I started writing away. I wanted it to be rhythmical, so like a good poem. Then I just couldn't. So my hand just continued writing. I had no idea what I was doing until I had finished. And it was an A5 size piece of paper. Full. I got told that it was perfect enough to be used as an ultimate song.
Well,
That's the only thing I would change.
well,
What about yourself? Anything you would change?
I don't know if I actually would necessarily change anything, but I mean, I definitely have regrets in my life. There's things that have happened that I wish I didn't do or, you know, didn't happen. But I think you can agree with this, and I know everybody says it, it's kind of a cliche thing, but we are the people that we are today because of the things that happened to us or the things that didn't happen to us. But kind of going forward in the future, what are, you know, I mean, you can say whatever amount of things you want to say, but what are some of the things you want to improve or change for humanity?
Oh, for humanity, it would be perception. Change their perception. If the people of today will be able to look at each other and not see the bad things, not worry about how much will this cost, how much will that cost.
Yeah.
Everything financial is just absolutely screwed up. Yeah. Everything financial. If we didn't have the finances that we need, things would be better, I'd say. As long as there's no greed. I'm just reading through the chat at the moment. Yeah, come down to Queen Tiger. Seems like hypocritical to be the rarest type and yet say how humble you are. It's good to be a rare type, but for me, I'd say because of that rarity, we've got a lot of work ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
There's not so many of us. We've still got a lot to do.
Have you seen any questions in the chat?
Just getting there, I think I might need to put on my glasses.
Well, if
Yeah, I'm short-sighted.
if you guys have any questions for John so far, let us know. I mean, this is kind of a silly question, but what was it like growing up in New Zealand?
Relaxed.
In what way?
Well, there's a channel called 1000 Words. She's an expat from Britain. She does a whole lot of videos, especially about the change from England to New Zealand. And one of that, for the pros and cons, you've got the laid back. There's the pro and the con. We have a relaxed attitude, but if we need things to get done, we'll get it done. We'll try not to stress about it too much. If a friend needs help, we'll give them a hand, whether it's a weekend or not.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question for you from Prince Tiavana. I have a question for you, Emily. How is the ESTP the shadow side of an INFJ? When multiple sources indicate that the shadow is actually ENFP, or maybe my understanding of shadow processes is incorrect.
I mean, I think there's different kinds of ways you can frame what they're asking as far as like a shadow. I mean, I've seen it different ways as well, where, you know, ENFP in the respect that you have, instead of whatever your function is, so for John and I, we lead with NI, ENFPs lead with extroverted intuition and E. So all of our functions are, you know, the same, but they're one is extroverted, the other is introverted, and vice versa. And then with ESTPs, that's basically the opposite of us, the positive opposite of us. So they lead with extroverted sensing, whereas we lead with introverted intuition, and their fourth function is introverted intuition, whereas our fourth function is extroverted sensing. So, I mean, I really could talk about either of those. John, would you like to kind of talk about your perspective on, you know, ENFPs and ESTPs when they relate to INFJs? John? Are you still there? I don't know if John's still there. I think his screen is frozen. Hopefully he'll come back. I'm not sure what's with his internet. I guess in the meantime, I'll answer that question of how I view, you know, ENFPs and ESTPs when they relate to INFJs. For ENFPs, I find that they're very, very fascinating friendships with INFJs. They're able to, somehow see through a similar lens, but it's a parallel lens. Like, again, they lead with extroverted intuition, so it's spread out. You know, they're thinking of different possibilities, whereas INFJs are more narrow focused in their possibility, or the way they see possibilities, but both lead with intuition. So I find that ENFPs and INFJs can have very deep and intellectual conversations that last for a very long time. And because you have such a different perspective, it's hard to really get bored with that other person. It definitely is possible, but it's very interesting. And I do find introverted feeling in particular with an ENFP to be very fascinating as well, as especially compared to INFJs, because I think we just see the world through a different lens when it comes to certain things. So it can be kind of challenging at first finding a balance. And I wouldn't even say at first. I think ENFPs and INFPs and INFJs naturally kind of are attracted to one another as friends. Okay, John, you're
Sorry
back.
about that.
Would you like to talk about, I was kind of going into ENFPs and INFJs, kind of how they relate to one another friendship-wise, but would you like to talk about INFJs and ENFPs and INFJs and ESTPs?
Okay. Well, basically, that whole lot of it goes over my head. Literally goes over my head. Some people will rub you the wrong way. Some people won't. It's all dependent on the different person.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I know of it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, we can kind of go off of that topic, but I could definitely talk about that in another video, but kind of without, I mean, going into too much detail, as far as ESTPs and INFJs go, I think that they can make, you know, a very good partnership because they share the same functions and they're seeking what each other is strong at. It isn't on the surface when you see an INFJ and an ESTP, you wouldn't necessarily put them together. But together, I feel like they can be very powerful together.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, as an INFJ or vice versa, as an ESTP, trying to work on your functions enough that in many ways you become very balanced and you're able to almost represent the ESTP as an INFJ and vice versa, I think can be very powerful as well. So I find Winz's an INFJ on YouTube. I find that she's very developed, almost to the point where she can oftentimes appear to the untrained eye as possessing certain ESTP qualities because she's so developed in her TI and SE. So,
yeah. Well, from my own opinion, watching the channel of Love Lou for Luann, her being an ESTP, with her father being an INFJ, yeah, chalk and cheese. That's all I can say, chalk and cheese. They'd get along together, but act more like a bull in a china shop. Can't exactly do too much with that, apart from pick up the messes.
I would have to disagree with that, but I do understand, you know, where you're coming from.
Yeah.
On that. I think it could be a very different relationship as a mother-daughter or father-daughter, you know.
Yeah, around each other for so much time, yeah.
And also it's not, you know, in that dynamic, you're not seen as equals. There's definitely a parental role and a child's role. So it can be I think it also depends on the situation. And I'm not saying that all I'm ESTPs and all INFJs will be 100%, you know, great for each other. I think there's a lot more to it than that. But
yeah, as long as we can help each other, that's the main thing.
Yes.
Sometimes we can learn from each other. Sometimes we can learn not from each other.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
How would you say music's kind of changed your life?
Oh. Well, with the MBTI, it's just brought everything in and put everything together into perspective. Yeah, it's just brought everything into perspective, mainly.
Yeah. Oh. So looks like we have another question. Zane Z said, question for Pucokie and John. Do you wish MBTI was taken more seriously than as just a playful test, or do you think its playful presentation and aids people finding and investigating it? That's a very good question.
Yeah, it's more like a coin. It's got two sides to it. One, it can be helpful. The other, it cannot be. With the helpful side, it can bring things together. With the not helpful side, is people nitpicking bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. But that in itself can also be helpful.
Yeah.
So these three sides to a coin. Yeah.
I mean, I would agree with that as well, because I think the thing about MBTI and just typology in general is, for many people, they do not, or, you know, a good plurality of people, or let's say, scientist, psychologist, they don't really value typology. And I think mostly that has to do with the fact that it hasn't been scientifically proven, and a lot of people do see it as a pseudoscience. I personally don't see it that way. I personally believe that not everything is so easily proven.
Yeah.
And just because you're not able to personally prove it doesn't mean that, it's BS. I think there's a lot of value in typology, whether you believe that or not. And I think it can be very helpful for people, but you're right. At the same time, some people choose to get into typology and they get into it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't have that intention, but I've seen people fall into traps, and I think this kind of goes in a lot of people's journeys. It kind of did it with me, is, you see yourself as better than other people because if you find out you're an intuitive, whether you are or not, you see yourself better than sensors, or maybe you get into socionics or kind of are a little too, even if you don't get into socionics, you kind of get too caught up in the perfect type when it's explained in Myers-Briggs for whatever type you are, and you become dismissive of other types, or you put yourself in a box and you don't really grow. I think that's the main issue. I don't mind if people don't, just see it as some silly thing. It doesn't bother me, but I think it's great that we have this community online that does see some type of value, even if you don't 100% believe in it. I think it is a really cool thing. So.
Yeah. All depends on each person's perspective. For some,
Exactly.
if they want to ridicule it, take it with a dash of salt.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it rubs you the wrong way, take it with a bit of salt. If you get a cut from it, add some salt to it. Make it hurt.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with the statement of taking things with a grain of salt. I think, let's see, Prince Tivana. Oh, I like your name. Rest in peace, Tivana, as a store. But
Sorry
since
for your loss, Sheila.
Oh wait, where did Sheila say that? What happened with Sheila?
Sheila, I lost my mom in July. Cherish them.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Sheila.
Sorry for your loss, Sheila.
Oh.
Since an INFJ is such a sponge, is it possible he can take on many traits from the parents, which adds to the already uniqueness of the individual? Yes. But that trait doesn't necessarily need to stick. It could be just like dust on a duster. It could stay there, it could move off. It could be ingrained inside the person. Or it could just be something easily wiped away. Doesn't have to be the actual personality of the person itself. Oh my goodness.
What?
Okay. I just came down to Prince Ivana. Can you get Ebola from bowling? Only if it's electronic. Let me guess, that joke just went over your head. Typical.
What? The Ebola comment?
Yeah, Ebola from bowling.
No, I'm sorry.
Electronic
Sometimes,
bowling?
John, I don't always laugh at certain types of jokes. And it's not, it's not saying that it isn't funny, but I
didn't quite click.
I don't always react to
It didn't quite click in time, that's right.
No, it did click in time. I completely knew what that is, but I just don't always react. And that's the thing if you knew me in person, you would know sometimes I don't really laugh at all jokes. It doesn't mean they're not funny. It just means,
Yeah,
you know,
not
I
a
didn't
problem.
laugh at it.
Not a problem.
I was reading a comment by, let's see, I thought I saw something. What do you think is holding so many INFJs back from romantic relationships? That's a very good question.
Oh, crikey. That I can easily answer, especially since I'm going to add astrology into this. I'm an Aries. Went into a relationship head first. Everything went with me. One thing which INFJs do have a fear of is being hurt over and over again, and have that impounded literally into us. Having that fear just building up is just sour, and that tends to head up to the future as well.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I think it can be hard.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people that, you know, that are INFJs? What would you give as far as relationship advice goes?
Relationship advice: take it easy, try to get to know the other person, don't rush into it. I know most people think that astrology is a whole lot of hoopla, complete rubbish, but there is some truth to it, especially the personality types. For an Aries, very hard-headed, stubborn, go into things head first. We rush into things, but yet we're also very loyal. Not many INFJs can say that. Some could be flighty. So it's not just the MBI type. There's also their astrology sign. If you can make both lots work, good on you.
Yeah.
Just do not go on a rebound. If someone has just broken up, don't go straight into a relationship. Give it some time.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. I know a lot of people do feel sometimes that they need to be in a relationship right away. And, you know, some people are just more prone to that, certain personalities and stuff. I've never been able to jump into another relationship after I've been, you know, after a relationship has ended.
Yeah, after a relationship is ended, then you'd need a bit of time to cool down, even if you are hungry for some affection.
Yeah.
You can get that with friends and family. It may not be the affection that you're actually in desperate need of, but it's some. If you're going for a one-night stand, go for a one-night stand. Just make sure it's just the one night, and you're not going to affect the other person.
Which I can imagine, you know, that sounds like a recipe for disaster in a lot of ways, because I think you can never really know how you're going to affect the other person if you know, engage willingly in certain things like that. I'm not saying that's bad, but necessarily it's not something that I, you know, would prefer to do. But
Exactly. If you're both of the mindset of one night stand, have sex, be over and done with, no relationship bond, no ties, there we go. I think with us as INFJs, however, we do want that closeness, we do want that romantic side. We're not wanting just a wham bam thank you ma'am. We do want that connection. It's just not exactly easy.
yeah. Michelle actually asked an interesting question about astrology. Michelle Wilson asked, how much do you think astrology affects your type? Is there any connection? Me and my boyfriend are both Virgo, ENFP, and INFJ, respectively.
Okay, well, you're both Virgo, so you know, from what I've seen of some videos, Virgos are mostly the romantic type, correct? And with that, you'd both be able to feed off each other. One being an extrovert, the other being an introvert. You'd be able to help each other. So hopefully, there will not be any confusion or confliction.
Yeah. Brenna Lee said, after much research, I don't think astrology holds much, if any, weight/truth. What would you say about that?
It does have some truth, but not for the future prediction type. For the personality types, if you were to get different people, find out their types, go through the listing of what the astrologers say, you'll be able to find bits and pieces of their personality in those star signs. The type of personality that does not reflect their MBTI. So it has some impact on the personality.
Something I would add to that is I don't think necessarily like your sun sign or your sign, for example. So like as you are an Aries, I'm a Leo, Michelle's a Virgo, you know, her boyfriend's a Virgo, things like that. I think what really plays a role, more so, I wouldn't say necessarily the actual just sun sign. I would say your whole chart can definitely have a correlation. When I say definitely, I think I guess definitely isn't the word I would use. It's more of, it is fascinating to compare charts versus your personality type. I think that holds more weight than just the single sun sign.
Yeah.
So, but
it's the whole package, not just the individual bits and pieces.
Exactly.
Quite intriguing how you said, how you were about to say interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I know that's, you know, that's, I guess, my word, because I write it and speak it all the time. Yeah. Not even just with this stuff. I just say interesting a lot. But as, you know, John and I were talking before we started this, I'm about to interview ESTP Queen Tiger at 8 p.m. EST. It's now 7:32. So we're going to wrap up in just a few more minutes. Do you guys have any final thoughts or questions for John? we'll wait until some of those come in. Do you have anything that you want to talk about, John? Particularly?
Not entirely, but if you suddenly find yourself alone and you hear a voice, don't initially dismiss it. Depending on what the voice says, it could be something for your future. Oh, God, Prince Tiavana. No, I did not enjoy economic studies. I hated it. But then again, I was good at maths.
Did you see oh, go ahead if you have something to
ID
answer.
Paul, yeah, the afterlife. I would say there is a finality, but right now I do believe that I have lived other past lives. So I would say at the moment I'm being recycled. It depends on if you do good enough, would you be able to hit the end stage?
Zane Z asks,
Yeah,
ask John, what is your favorite book to read for fun?
For fun, my favorite author, I would say, would be James Herbert. My favorite book, there's a whole series by John Norman. I cannot find it anywhere. The Chronicles of Counter-Earth. That's an interesting series. I think there's at least 30 volumes. Yeah, I tend to read the Bible, but I find that reading between the lines, you can tell which is real, which is implanted, especially for the newly revised version.
Yeah. I think as our final question, or one of our, if not the second to last question, should be, by my life has fallen apart. What about being in a negative pattern or relationship as an INFJ, and how to break out of it, or what to keep in mind for improving it?
Okay, for a negative pattern or relationship, as an INFJ, go out into the wild, scream if you need be, just to get rid of any tension, but feel the energy around you. That's the good pattern. When you get to the negative pattern, take a step away. If they don't like it, that's their problem. As for the relationship, I know it may be hard to get back into another one, but you may need to break it. It's hard to say, hard to do, hard to bear with the consequences, I'd say. But if it's not negative, go for it. If it's negative, take a break.
Yep. I agree with that. I don't think anybody should stay in a negative relationship or something that's bringing you down. Doesn't matter who you are, what type you are. If you're feeling drained or you have negative energy associated with that person, doesn't mean that person's bad, but it's just not a good fit for you. And, chances are they are doing something problematic. But also it's good to think about yourself and maybe the things that you could do differently next time in another relationship, things that maybe you're a little too accepting of certain qualities, or you kind of dismiss your own intuitions when it comes to your gut feeling about someone. or situation, I think you always need to, like you said, trust the voice.
Yeah.
Question
it though. Question the voice.
Yeah.
It might not be the right voice talking to you, but definitely question the voice.
I agree with
there
that.
is one thing I would like to say is, for those out there, single guys, don't go thinking that a single mother that you may meet is just there to want a baby daddy. She may have had a bad situation that made her single. Give her a chance.
Yep. I think it's easy to judge people from a distance, but the thing is, sometimes the people that we think are great for us, the people that look good on paper, and this goes for jobs, this goes for basically anything in life, if you haven't ever experienced that or met that person, whatever it is, those can often be not good for us or even volatile. So
Yeah.
I would say, give people chances, but also trust your intuition. Definitely question it, at least a little bit, because you're not going to always be 100% correct.
Oh, heck no, heck no. Deception is always around.
Yes. So I think on that note,
it's goodbye from me and it's goodbye from him. Yep.
Yeah. So I hope you guys have a great night. What time is it over there, John?
It's only 20 to 2 in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
6 hours behind, yet a day ahead.
Wow. That is very crazy.
Yes, I wanted to time it so you'd have your dinner and you'd be fine.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And if you guys haven't checked out John's channel, you should definitely go over there and subscribe. Give him some love.
You don't need to subscribe.
You don't need to, but I think you should, because I think John has some, very interesting things to say. And I always find it interesting, different perspectives from different experiences, different walks of life, different, all kinds of things can make, even though we do share the personality type, it doesn't mean we have had the same experiences, behavior, upbringing, which is very, very interesting.
And varied. Definitely varied.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I hope you guys are, again, having a good evening, morning, afternoon. Bye, guys.
Arrivederci. Sayonara.